Hello, I'm Mr. Eliason, and welcome to World History. Today we're going to talk about conflict in West Asia, or the area sometimes known as the Middle East. We're going to specifically try to talk about the Palestinian Israeli conflict, and obviously there's a lot to go into here, so we're just going to paint with some broad brushes and try to establish the various positions of the two sides and why this is such a difficult conflict to solve going forward. So here's your objectives for today. Pause and take them in, and let's dive in. We'll let Golda Meir explain the Zionist case for us, so take a moment, pause, and read, and then we'll move forward. In general, the aftermath of World War II significantly increased the movement for an Israeli Jewish state. Though we, of course, remember that the whole Balfour Declaration had established somewhat solid British support for trying to create a Jewish homeland in Israel. The UN had attempted to create a partition plan in between an Arab state and a Jewish state in the aftermath of this to take into account to some degree the settlement patterns that had already happened, with Jerusalem being a UN administered independent city. So, the problem, of course, with this is you're displacing some significant Palestinians and you're leading to the destruction of the country of Palestine. And so the question is, what's the relationship going to be between this Palestinian Arab state and this new Jewish state of Israel, and what's going to happen in regards to all of this? Of course, unfortunately, we don't get the time to figure this out because the Arab League is created right in the aftermath of World War II, and the Arab League launches the first Arab-Israeli war on Israel. The forces led by Egypt, Syria, and Iraq, as well as to some extent, Lebanon and Jordan, launch an invasion of Israel, and Israel is able to fight off the Arab League in the first Arab-Israeli war, and the end result of that is a significant gain in territory for Israel. This is a pattern that is going to be repeated. So after the first Arab-Israeli war, you see significant gains and the creation of a much, much larger Israel than had been created in the UN partition plan. You also see the creation of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, two of the Palestinian-controlled areas that are going to become hot points of conflict going forward. Israel, of course, felt like they needed additional territory in order to have a contiguous state, and that they were only defending themselves from aggression. And the ability to protect themselves is an important piece of the Jewish state of Israel, because obviously the persecution, the horrors of the Holocaust, and the traditions of anti-Semitism that we've seen over the course of this entire class. For the Palestinians, of course, their opinions are pretty straightforward. Take a moment, read, we'll move on. They feel as if their land is now being taken away, and they would like to have their own homeland in which they have their own self-determination and are able to determine their own fate. This leads to the creation of the PLO, or the Palestinian Liberation Organization. This group is going to use a whole bunch of different tactics in order to try to secure their aims, including violence and terror activities, as well as eventually political pressure and, other means. So, this is the basics of the debate. Both of these groups want the land, feel like they have a historical claim to the land, and feel like the other side is not recognizing their interests and is abusing them. Here's the charter and founding of the PLO. So take a moment to pause, read, and we'll move on. In the end, fight over the Red Sea is going to be one of his key pieces here. Specifically, Israel's ability to control ports on the Red Sea, right next to the Sinai Peninsula. This is what's going to lead to the next fight with the various Arab states around Israel. Specifically, we start to see a military buildup during this time by the Arab League, specifically Egypt and Syria. Here's Israel's basic understanding of their interests. So take a moment, pause, and read. Obviously, Israel feels like they need to be able to defend themselves because, they feel very vulnerable for a whole host of reasons, which we've kind of already gotten into. And so in Operation Focus, this is a preemptive strike against Arab forces, which more or less devastated the Egyptian Air Force and precluded the very quick Six-Day War. In the Six-Day War, Israel secured their access to the Red Sea by annexing the entire Sinai Peninsula, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, the Gaza Strip, and all of these other territories, significantly increasing increasing their territory, despite the fact that militarily they were significantly outclassed by their Arab neighbors. This saw the Arab neighbors go into a militarization campaign and to create closer ties with the Soviet Union in order to advance their technology, in order to try to counter what they saw as Israel's aggressive tendencies. Israel, of course, is arguing that all of this is necessary in order to ensure their access to the Red Sea and their continued survival, and they are merely defending themselves against hostile invaders and people who seek their destruction. And so, in the end, the takeaway from all of this is Israel continues to be able to defend themselves, but within Israel, they now control a pretty significant Arab Muslim population. And this is going to lead to some significant problems within Israel itself. So take a moment, pause, and read. What to do with all of these Palestinians who now live in Israel is one of the key issues here. Should they be given self-government? Should they be allowed to participate in Israeli government? To what extent are they going to be Israeli citizens versus to what extent are the Palestinian areas going to be self-governed? These are things that we're going to continue to fight about going forward. In the end, the Arab states are going to continue to fight a war of attrition against Israel, wearing down Israel's forces, bringing in and buying supplies from the Soviet Union, and continuing to attempt to put military and economic pressure on Israel in order to gain back the territory lost in the Six-Day War. This war of attrition continues up until the 1970s, when we see direct military intervention and conflict break out again. The Soviets attempted to not make this a proxy war, but to some extent it still became that, because the United States is, of course, providing support for Israel. The Arab states are generally getting their supplies for the Soviet Union. And so this Yom Kippur War, Israel was stretched. They'd been fighting this war of attrition for almost a decade, and the Soviets had been providing increasing military support for the Arab states. And so the United States had to get directly involved. They airlifted in supplies, although they did not provide any actual troops on the ground, but they did help reinforce Israel and allowed Israel to hold their own in the Yom Kippur War. And so this war ended up being somewhat indecisive. American aid, specifically Operation Nickel Grass, helped defeat and push back the Syrian invasion as well as the Egyptian invasion, and helped again Israel hold their own and protect the territory that they had annexed. This led to an oil crisis, which you'll definitely talk about in your U.S. history classes. Saudi Arabia, as the leader of OPEC, started an oil embargo against the United States, which led to increasing gas prices, fuel shortages, and to some degree an economic crisis. In the United States, this was a political and economic crisis that led the United States to get significantly more energy independent and to develop their own oil resources. But for the time being, they were still dependent on the Middle East, and so this is sort of the long-term effect of this conflict, the United States getting dragged into larger Middle Eastern or West Asian politics. At the Camp David Accords, we see the first time that an Arab state really recognizes and sits down with Israel. Anwar Sadat, the leader of Egypt, does end up signing a treaty brokered by U.S. President Jimmy Carter, although he is then assassinated. And his assassination sends a message to the rest of the Arab world that generally engaging with Israel is potentially dangerous because hardliners within your own society might turn against you. And so, although Egypt does recognize Israel and the Yom Kippur War and the conflict comes to an end, there's going to be increasing difficulty in getting other Arab states to recognize Israel. The Palestinians are going to get increasingly confrontational with the Israelis in the First and Second Intifada, and we're going to see a combination of protests, boycotts, and riots in attempts to get self-government. And in general, self-government is granted to the Palestinian territories. And at the same time, Israel is going to build up their missile defenses. And this pattern of rockets being fired into Israel and Israel shooting them down is one of the sort of central themes of modern Middle Eastern politics. We'll come back to this and talk a little bit more about the settlement movement, about the building of, the building of walls, and about some of these policies going forward. But this is the basis of the conflict, and this gives us some decent background to understand why West Asia is still as volatile as it is, and what the nature is of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So we'll leave you there for now. Thank you for listening.